All right, hi guys, welcome to our lab today. We are going to be experimenting with diffusion. So this is going to be a pretty simple lab here, but it has really cool results. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just mixing my food coloring in with my olive oil to get it ready for this experiment here. So if you are doing this at home, you can be doing this experiment with whatever kind of materials you have at the house. It's just nice to have any olive oil or like vegetable oil, anything that's kind of oily. Here, let me move these over here so you can see. Well, this is my red solution. I've got oil and I've got some red food coloring in here. And as you can see, because oil, remember, doesn't like to mix with water, the food coloring is kind of staying as its own little droplets, and same with my green here. And so that's what's going to make this lab look really cool once we start applying it to the water. And then I have, for my design my experiment, I came up with two different concoctions that we're gonna test out in the water. I'm not sure how these are gonna work. That's kind of the point of experimenting here, is to see if there's a difference in the rate of diffusion depending on which properties I am using. So let's go ahead and get started. I've got my hot beakers, which are the purple tape, which is here, and then I've also got my other two hot beakers here. So I'll do hot beakers, and then I've got my green beakers here. These are the cold ones. And then I've got my pipettes right here. So let's go ahead and get started. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put some red solution into my warm water. So I'm just doing the standard part of the experiment here, the olive oil and the red food coloring. So this is kind of like the part that you guys will be doing just as the basic demonstration, right? And then we'll get into experiment mode after we see kind of what the normal rate is for hot water and cold water. So I'm putting my green in my cold water here. So while you guys watch what happens here, let me angle this a little bit better because it looks like you aren't able to see exactly what's going on. There we go. So you can see the hot water, there's something already happening, right? And I started it pretty much at the same exact time as I started the green. There's the green, it's starting to go. So while you guys watch that, I'm gonna get my two experimental beakers ready. So what I'm experimenting with is I'm seeing how the temperature and the mixture might change the rate of diffusion. So I'm gonna do my fancy red mixture here. I'm gonna do this one in my hot and cold. And I'll edit this so that you guys know what's my standard experiment, and then I'm gonna do my experimental group here. So in this case, my control variables are the amount of food coloring that I'm using, as well as the fact that I'm using both the hot and cold. They're both at, both of the hot ones are at the same hot temperature, and both of the cold ones are at the same cold temperature, and then I'm doing the same amount dropped into each beaker. So those are all controls. My variables are what they're mixed with and the temperatures. So my red beaker here is a mixture of olive oil, soap, and food coloring. And so I'm gonna put that in a hot beaker and a cold beaker. Oh, that looks interesting. So let's see what happens here. And I haven't done this yet, so that's kind of the whole fun of doing a science experiment, is you don't exactly know what's gonna happen. You might have an idea based off of your hypothesis, but you won't know for sure until you've done the experiment. And then that's a great time for you to then kind of change things up. So this is my green and my purple. So you guys can kind of watch what's happening there as everything seems to diffuse. It looks like these are almost done here. So this red one, remember this was in the hot water, looks like it's pretty well diffused. My green one is still doing its thing. So let me bring it a little bit closer so you guys can see. So that's the red one here. And then this is the green one. Remember, green is cold, red is hot. So it looks like green is still kind of mixing. I'm trying not to move it too much so I don't mix it up just on my own. I'm trying to let the chemicals do the work. So here, it looks like the hot water is still mixing. It's doing something interesting. Definitely looks a little different than the one with just the oil. And then this is my cold water with my soap and oil. And you can see it's not going quite as fast. So there's that. And then so while that's happening there, now I'm going to do the last part of my experiment portion. And this one is nail polish remover mixed with oil and food coloring. So I just kind of found different things that I thought would interact in an interesting way together, and I wanted to see how then that impacted the rate of diffusion. So let me put some inside of the green tube, which is the cold water, and then let me put some inside of the hot water here, which is the purple container. Like I said, I'm going to label this so you guys can see what's what. So you guys can really do whatever kind of experiment you think would be interesting to see how it might impact the rate of diffusion. So looking at these ones, it looks like the cold water that was just oil and food coloring is still working on diffusing all the way. Meanwhile, the warm water looks pretty well mixed, right? There's no darker portions or lighter portions. Those were my demonstration tubes, so I'm gonna put those back here. So we're done with the demonstration portion. Now let's gonna look at my experiment. So remember, what I'm doing is, for my experiment, trying to figure out if the solution and the temperature impact the rate of diffusion. So I did solution A in cold and hot water, and then I did solution B in cold and hot water, and tried to see if there was a difference in the rate of diffusion. And so looking here, it looked like solution A, which was soap, oil, and food coloring, kind of had the same reaction in terms of the hot water diffused faster than the cold water. You can still see some other stuff floating around in there. And then for this one, what's interesting is that I don't really see a ton of diffusion happening. It looks like, oh, I kind of mixed up. Oh, interesting. Did you guys see that? So if I mix it, the color then floated back up to the top. So that's interesting. It seems like by mixing the nail polish remover with the oil and the food coloring, I almost changed the density of the food coloring, which means that it's not really diffusing at all. Interesting. Okay, so then that means that solution A, the soap, oil, and the food coloring, was able to have a pretty standard rate of diffusion. This one you can see is still kind of dissolving. So that's one thing you could measure, is just the time it takes for it to dissolve. Meanwhile, these ones, like I said, aren't really dissolving at all, which is wacky. I didn't know that was gonna be the result. I really didn't guess at all that could have happened, but it seems like by adding nail polish remover to the oil and food coloring, I prevented diffusion from happening at all. Maybe if I let these sit long enough, they'll slowly diffuse, and so maybe I didn't prevent it so much as just made it take a lot longer. But normally in hot water, things diffuse faster than cold water, and there's a question asking why that is that you guys will answer on the worksheet, but it looks like both of these had the same speed of like not really doing anything. So I will let you guys know if anything happens. I'm gonna let these just hang out on my desk and take a picture of the final result and let you guys know if anything changes. But I'm really fascinated at what kind of chemical reaction happened between the nail polish remover, the oil, and the food coloring that had this result. So when you guys are doing this demonstration experiment at home, one of the things that you guys can do, just like I did, is you can do the demonstration. So the demonstration, remember, is just the olive oil, the food coloring, and then you pour that into water, both the hot water and a cold water. And then you can just visualize which one is able to dissolve or diffuse faster. Remember, when it's fully diffused, you're just looking for an even color. There's no darker or lighter spots. It looks pretty even. And like I said, timing it is a really good way of measuring the rate of diffusion. And so that's the demonstration portion. Then when it comes time to design your own lab, you can kind of do what I did and maybe introduce some different ingredients. Maybe you want to try even different temperatures. Like if you want to do cold, so cold that it has ice cubes in it, and then if you want to do so hot that the water is boiling, that might be interesting. You can try it with olive oil, without olive oil, maybe see if the olive oil slows down the rate of diffusion or not. Or you can kind of do what I did and mix some different things together. So I did like soap and olive oil, and then I did nail polish remover and olive oil, and I saw a really cool result that I wasn't expecting. So lots of different things you can do for your experiment portion, and then you'll just report below what results you saw. And like I said, I'm gonna go back and watch this video to be able to measure the rates of diffusion, how long it took for them to look pretty even in terms of how much solution is in what. I think my cold soap is still diffusing, and then my nail polish remover and my olive oil are still doing funky stuff, so I'll give you guys an update on that. But otherwise, have fun experimenting at home with this. I think it's a really easy lab to do at home with some pretty cool results. And then, of course, complete the worksheet. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Thank you.